Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast, a production of neonewstoday.com. I'm your host, Dylan Grabowski. In this episode of the Smart Economy Podcast, I chat with Len Sir, the investment lead at MEXC M-Ventures and Labs. MEXC is a custodial exchange founded in 2018 that boasts more than 7 million users worldwide and supports more than 1,600 cryptocurrencies. M-Ventures and Labs is a comprehensive fund committed to empowering innovations in the cryptocurrency field via strategic investment, mergers and acquisitions, funds of funds, and project incubation. In this conversation, Len and I talk about his background in equity venture investment and entrance into the blockchain space, the vast roles that a VC plays in the incubation of ideas and projects, the focus areas of M-Ventures and Labs, strategies for reviewing lots and lots of projects, his insights into Neo's recent Decoding Web3 University tour, and much more. Just a reminder, nothing said on this podcast is a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens, that nothing should be taken as financial advice, and that the host or guests may hold tokens discussed in any given episode. With that said, I really enjoyed chatting with Len, and I hope you enjoy the conversation too. Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. Today we are joined by Len Sir, the investment lead at MEXC M-Ventures and Labs. How are you doing today, Len?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. We just made it past last week, and for reference and context for people who are listening to this episode in the future, we're 1 week post the FTX collapse. So before we kind of get into the meat of the conversation today, I just wanted to hear from your perspective, how did that whole fiasco impact what's going on with you and in your world, and what are just some insights you might have?
Personally, I am fortunately not affected by the incident. But as for the industry, it came as quite a bit of a shock, and many of my friends took direct. Many of my friends, many of the investment institutions, many of the fund managers, many of the projects who have funds on FTX received the direct blows. I think that's quite a clear picture. And although mishandling of fund and all of that is definitely no. As a result, I do think that this incident does help piercing the bubbles, accelerating the deleveraging at this downturn of the market for the whole industry. And I think in the longer run, for institutions who made mistakes to expose the mistakes, that would be a good thing. One, does push for the overall industry to strive for more transparency. And two, we're in the bear market. We have been in this deleveraging effort, and that does push that progress a little bit more forward, so that with less inflation, with less inflated asset prices, every participant in the industry could get a chance actually to take a breather. Probably not for those who still have funds stuck at black holes. But overall, it does give us the chance to rethink what mistakes we've encountered, what are the technical constraints that we have seen both in centralized and decentralized web services, and how can we build on top of what we already have. Overall, it's an iteration, trial, find mistakes, maybe some bubbles bursts, and we do that again. We'll rinse and repeat.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your insight. MEXC is a large-scale custodial exchange, so it's nice to hear just kind of what is going on under the hood and like what you guys are thinking about as this kind of unfolds. So to introduce you to the listeners of the Smart Economy Podcast, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what your path was into becoming the investment lead at M-Ventures and Labs?
Started out in equity venture investment way back when, mostly focused on fintech technologies. And I think starting in 2015, 2016, some projects, some founders were starting to say, hey, we're going to use blockchain technology as the basis, or we're using the decentralized ledger technology as the basis of our services. And I was like, hey, what this is? delve a little bit deeper and say, hey, this is the revolution. And I turned full crypto in 2017, focused still on the primary market venture investments, but also did project incubation, product development, and also ran for a very short period of time a secondary market trading fund, a prop fund. A very small scale, was way too tiresome, and decided to focus on the investment part. Later, I joined the MEXC in the spring of 2022 because I wanted to sort of attach myself to a larger organization, and the custodial exchanges is still a category of major players in the crypto industry. And I think this is where I can affect some positive change, because through investment, I mean, unlike individual GPLP structured funds, we are the strategic investment arm for a custodial exchange. So through investment, what we hope to do is not only participate in and foster development for fast-growing, emerging, new, revolutionary products, projects, and people, but also we invest for the strategic development of our own company or of our own base or core business as well. So that's how we got here, and that's where we are. MEXC started out in 2018, grew pretty fast in the last downturn of the market. Right now, we're a team of approximately 1,000 people with 8 digits user base across 170 regions in the globe. And we do pride ourselves for offering a cohort of services for over 900 crypto assets. I think that's one of the most comprehensive selection amongst the market.
Yeah, and you did mention that there is a role for custodial exchanges moving forward. There's a high learning curve when it comes to maintaining your own keys and protecting your assets. So right now, we're probably in the wake of people maybe being scared of custodial exchanges. So how do you kind of make folks feel safer or a little bit better about custodial exchanges? Because right now in the news cycle, the whole thing is get your keys off of exchanges and hold on to your own assets. What are maybe some of the counterpoints to the current trend and narrative?
I'm in full support for people who want to take their assets out of any kind of custody service into their own decentralized wallet just for a peace of mind. I'm in full support of that, because that's what blockchain is for. If you want to make absolutely sure that you're the only one who can access your assets, then you are able to do that because we have this technology. But in terms of the customer relations between the users and centralized exchanges, I think it's like every other business. It's like every business where, I mean, technology can guarantee the safety of your assets, but whoever is running the protocol, whoever is running the service, either decentralized or centralized, custodial or non-custodial, it's a relationship of trust. You see some actors behaving in a bad way, you do wonder, other actors in the same category, do they do the same? And now the burden of proof is resting on the shoulders of centralized exchanges. And we have seen in the past week that a bunch of us are providing proof of reserve, are claiming that, yes, we're 100%. And if you do want to test that out, yeah, make your withdrawals. And if you do feel safe, then yeah, deposit your assets back into the platform and continue using the services we're providing. And that's basically it. But overall, we do need, as an industry, a little bit of more self-regulation and a little bit of self-prompted transparency that I think all of the custodial services, not including but not limited to centralized exchanges, that we should, by ourselves, provide some kind of transparency so that our users can have a peace of mind, and in return, kind of pushing us as a custodial service more connected to the decentralized tech stack.
Yeah, that's really refreshing to hear, to just say, hey, if you want to take your assets off, go for it. We're backed 1-to-1. Really nice to hear a representative of a custodial exchange say that. So you don't necessarily work at MEXC, the exchange. You're part of the Ventures and Labs branch.
Yes.
So can you just share a little bit of the differences between the two?
It's under the same hood. And that's under the umbrella of MEXC, the exchange. I'm not on the exchange operation side. I'm on the investment and incubation side. The ventures part handles investments, and incubation part handles. There are multiple words for what we do. There are multiple sayings to describe what we do, but mostly what we do is provide any kind of services to help projects to grow from, I don't want to call it necessarily 0 to 1, maybe 0.2 to at least 0.7. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but yeah, you're nodding, so you get what I mean. And that includes project positioning, liquidity release strategy, PR marketing strategies, and fundraise, collaboration, so on and so forth. Basically, whatever the project needs to hit a target, hit the next milestone, and that's what I provide. And the venture side handles the investment purely. We're under the same hood, integrated team, and we're very open to collaborations with other institutions, either a venture studio or a group of developers or other investment institutions or other exchanges. We're very open to that.
Awesome. So how long has M-Ventures and Labs been around? It seems like the entity Ventures and Labs is relatively new. Beforehand, there was an M-Labs. So what was M-Labs and what has the merge kind of done for that entity?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. That's actually on us. When MEXC, the organization, the exchange started back in 2018, very shortly after we started making investment, we started making a primary market investment, we started helping projects to grow. But that's the on us part. We have not been very vocal about our involvement. We just kept our head down, helped the projects, cut the checks, and that was it. And then we realized that's got to change. We want to put the words out. We want to let people know that we are in play. We have been in play, and we have been helping projects. And so we want to get the words out so that people, projects, teams, students, even who want to learn about us, who want to get involved, can have an additional resource that is us. That can, hey, come chat with us, come ask us for investment, come ask us for network introductions, come ask us about almost anything, so long as this is for the overall development of the crypto and blockchain industry. So redo a little branding, put the words out, have a little party, and say, hey guys, we've been here. We are M-Ventures or M-Labs, and we hope that's what you guys call us from now on. And here's what we've been doing, and we're continuing doing so. Even during the downturn of the market, even after a bunch of collapses of prominent institutions or projects, or just the general market, we still believe in the long-term development of the industry as a whole. And we've been continuing investments, we've been continuing our incubations, we've been continuing our listing practices on the exchange operations side. And if you're still in the game, if you still believe this, if you have an idea, come chat with us. That's basically the message.
Cool. So the merge was really just to kind of put the venture side at the forefront. You guys were there the entire time, but now the new name just kind of says this is who we are and what we've been doing. So what are some examples of projects that M-Ventures and Labs has invested in, incubated? I know you probably have a bunch of babies you're really proud of. So would you like to talk a little bit about some of them?
Personally, I've only joined since this spring, and many of the projects I'm involved in are still underway. So I really cannot talk about that in a very clear, plain language. But in the past, we've supported early investors for quite a few L1s, quite a few middleware projects, and a bunch of application end projects. We've also served as validators or data providers for oracles, for L1s, things like that.
Cool. I got you.
Do you want me to name? Do you want me to name them? Or
yeah, if you don't feel comfortable or confident in naming them, then we don't have to dox anyone right now. I'm sure in due time we'll hear more about MEXC's amazing projects that they've incubated. So I noticed in my research that the M-Ventures and M-Labs team formed recently, officially, but you guys have been there for quite some time. There are three primary focus areas that the team is focusing on: Web3, the new public chain ecosystem, and infrastructure. So can you just share a little bit of insight into how the team chose these three core areas to focus on?
As the investment arm for a centralized exchange, our thesis is a little bit different from the purely GPLP venture funds. First of all, we are chain agnostic, we're stage agnostic, we are vertical agnostic. Okay, that does not put us in a good light. That sounds like we're trying to do everything, but that is actually what we're trying to do. Good. We don't turn down things. Oh, if you're making a DID project, then no. If you're making an L1, then say yes, yes, yes. That's not who we are. If you're making a DID project, tell us how you're going to do it, tell us why you're doing it. So we come in, we pitch in our thoughts on that, we pitch in our research on that, and say, hey, this might be, with a little tweak, this might be a very good application or very good service to the rest of the applications. Then yeah, we can go ahead on that. So there's that. And we do have different principals or focused guys on different areas. And the ones, the infrastructures and the Web3 application stack that you just mentioned are some of the interest areas that our team feel comfortable, one, investing in, and two, feel confident for an imminent scaling up. Infrastructure-wise, of course, that's the technical basis for the whole industry. And every time we go through a bull and bear market, we see boomings of applications, which in turn tells us, hey, we are, yes, very limited by the technical basis, and we do need to make some upgrades to that area. And infrastructure building is a constant theme. I understand that almost every investment institutions in this industry is focusing on that part. And on the application end, I think that's also kind of a given concept where we were talking about the blockchain, the decentralized part of any kind of product or project in this industry. It's still, they're all still web-based or services. And the services and the application end should be the ones capturing the most value because they're the ones creating most values for the user base. So we're focusing on that part as well, because what good does it do if we have pages and pages and scrolls of code of the product and no one is able to use it via a simplified UI, but only for ones who can code and read code and type code can interact with the tech stack? That's just not how it works, right? Ultimately, what we are hoping for the blockchain as a category of technologies and the blockchain as an industry, we're hoping for these to do is to build a stack from technical infrastructure to business infrastructures, the key point, the cornerstones of each vertical's applications, and to the end user application, the whole stack. We want a balanced, fully developed stack to provide services to the individual users. Then I think that's the ultimate goal for all of us in this industry. We also do periodic reviews of our investment thesis because unlike other VCs who have fund lives to worry about, we act a little bit differently. We appropriate a percentage of our revenues as the principal for our investments. So we actually are able to take the risks in the longer terms. We allow, and we actually, me personally, I do actually encourage projects to pivot if and when they see an opportunity. And see, I'm all about the iteration part. Like, here's the check, here are the checks from a bunch of other investors, and here's what you propose to do. We've reviewed it. You guys have understood it. You guys proposed it. Let's try it out. If it works to a certain degree, let's fix out the bugs. If it doesn't work, what went wrong? Let's figure that part out.
Cool. It's nice to hear that you're supportive of the pivot, because sometimes we can go into a project or an idea, and then after 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever, we realize, oh, we thought that it was this, but we can pivot to provide a better service based off of what we're really trying to work on. You mentioned earlier that you can't really talk about specific projects that you guys are investing in and incubating right now. So maybe this question might help get to the core of what I was wondering a little bit about. What are sort of the infrastructures that are interesting to MEXC's M-Labs and Ventures branch? Are you guys interested in oracles right now? Is it decentralized networks generally, bridges? What are kind of like the trending kind of types of infrastructure?
We are focusing on, let's take infrastructure, the word infrastructure, for instance. We're focusing on two categories or two aspects of the infrastructure per se. One is in the technical sense, and one is in the business process sense. Technical sense, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, people categorize L1s, rollups, ZKs, all of those, and bridges and oracles, all of those into the tech infrastructure category, right? You can agree or disagree, but yes, that's one thing we're focusing on. And me personally, I think the anything to do with scalability is a key of this round's iteration or development or upgrades, so to speak. I don't want to call them patches because that sounds cheap, but it's essentially what they are. We have the existing skeleton of a network that runs pretty smoothly, but it's pretty expensive and slow. And if you see what happened in the past 2 years, let's not go that far, we can see that the network is congested. Basically means the servers are not supporting the end use case. So how can we make that the basis of the service more reliable, more scalable, have more bandwidth without compromising the security part? So that the text part. So the scalability part, any L2, any kind of roll up, that's what we're focusing on. And another aspect of the infrastructure is what we can call key business, or it can call business infrastructure. What I mean by that is the projects or the applications or the services within a particular vertical that functions as the bedrock for anything happens within that vertical. Let's take DeFi for instance. DeFi, the core of the DeFi is the FI part, right? It's finance, parentheses, industry, parentheses back, in a decentralized fashion. And the core functionalities or services that institutions and individual investors need is 1, exchange for the token swaps, 2, oracles, so that any kind of trading activities have some kind of price feeder, 3, lending. We have seen very many collateralized loan protocols. We haven't really seen any prominent, let's say, fixed rate lending products, which if you compare the DeFi sphere to the traditional finance sphere, the fixed rate products is one of the key things that we're missing. Yes, there are products, there are protocols for fixed rate lending. To my knowledge, none of them have really taken off, and most of them rely on the AMM models for the liquidity. And if you look at the numbers, there is significant market inefficiency. If there are other projects or someone coming up with a brilliant idea, say, hey, here's how we do it in a decentralized way, then that's going to be, for lack of better words, huge.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way you break down the types of services that go into DeFi and then kind of the focus areas for how to look into investing or incubating into those teams and projects. When we were on tour, we recently did the Decoding Web3 tour, and you participated in panels on a lot of the West Coast universities. And I felt like I lobbed you a really fastball question out of nowhere, like, what is Web3? And you did a great job of answering it. So I hope I didn't put you too much on the spot then, but your answer really got a lot of wheels turning for me, because it was basically the thesis of Web3 is the ability for us to own our own data and to take that with us wherever we want. Now, what are some of the projects that come to your plate at MEXC? What are some of the Web3 projects that folks are presenting to you guys and asking for investment and incubation in? And is it something as simple as just NFTs or just DeFi? Or are there additional focuses in the Web3 space that you guys are looking into?
Are you asking about the projects that come to us or the ones that we really like to focus on?
That's a great question in and of itself. What are the Web3 projects coming to you? What's the general trend with them? Because I know you can't mention specific projects. So what's the general trend of Web3 projects coming to you? And what do you and your team think should be the next wave of investment into Web3?
We've been asked by DeFi projects starting way back when, 2019-ish. And then more DeFi protocols in 2020. Then there were, in the Web3 sense, the broader Web3 sense, we had GameFi projects, we had NFT projects, we had metaverse creations, and then we had music NFTs, we had more gaming projects. Because we're talking about, we're talking in the Web3 application side of things, right? So I'm not counting the L1s, L2s, rollups, DKs, and whatnot. Yeah, those were the sequence of concentration of projects that were coming in, and it was, I would say, a very logical flow of things where when the tech stack, the basics of the tech stack is ready, then the first batch of applications got to be something to do with the asset exchanges, right? And then for a better user experience, for better user acquisition processes, the GameFi projects, the X to earn, so to speak, projects have gained traction, and naturally, founders who've considered those types of projects were trying to say, hey, this is taking off, let's get in. That's basically it. For us, we welcome any and all experiments to apply decentralized technology to whatever the end web services that many of us are thinking or probably using on a daily basis, but with the caveat of asking us the hard questions: why blockchain? Do you have to do that in a decentralized way? If so, then let's work out the strategy to make that work. If no, then let's rethink that.
How many projects on maybe like a weekly or a monthly basis are being put on your plate to evaluate? I would have to imagine you have to review a ton of different types of projects. So what's like the flow for the number of projects on average that fall onto your plate, like on a monthly basis? And what's your strategy for kind of going through all of them and keeping your finger on the pulse? Because there's so much that goes into Web3 just based off the projects you listed off alone. You kind of have to be an expert in a lot of different areas. So what's that like? How many projects are coming onto your plate, and how do you manage digging through and really like grokking what they represent?
Okay, volume-wise, I would say on a monthly basis, we, as a team, review 20 to 120 cases. So depending, sometimes there are huge influxes of projects raising funds, and sometimes the number's lower. You get the point. But yeah, that's about the volume we've been experiencing. On your second question, I do make a point trying to avoid becoming a jack of all trades and expert of none. I do not claim to be an expert in everything. Like I said before, each of us at M-Ventures have a interest in the focus area. And if we run across a project that we are not so familiar with for the vertical, for the project, for the problems in that specific area of web services, then yes, we have our teammates, our colleagues to talk to consult with. And we do have our own tech advisors, we have our own tech teams that we can consult with. And we do build our network of investors, developers, users, and founders. We're in constant conversation to understand why whatever proposal that was came into being, what the problems they're trying to solve, and is that proposal, is the solution proposed logically sound, technically feasible, right? And it is kind of hard to keep tabs on almost everything. Our friend Tyler was saying that he just doesn't go crypto Twitter because the sheer amount of information is going to overwhelm almost everyone. But what I do is that a key source of learning, yes, obviously everyone's keep learning, and a key source for my learning comes from the founders I meet, because they are the ones actually proposing a solution to a specific set of problems. And us would be in the perfect position to ask, what do you think the problem is? Why do you think that is? And how do you propose to solve them? Do we see logical errors in your proposal? Do we see anything else that bars you from implementing that solution? And you do get to meet very many smart people who say, everybody thinks this, but no, I've been doing this for a long time. I know exactly what the problem is. And I think that blockchain technology or whatever I'm proposing is going to solve this problem. For the first 2 points, yes, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what the problem is. Yes, I think almost everyone rely on the founders and to say that, yes, we do our due diligence and we do our verifications. We have our own research. But yeah, if you're saying the problem is, and we see that too, good. The next step is usually where most of us, including I'm talking founders and investors all together. That's where the next step would be where most of us have problems with, is that the statement of, I think blockchain technology is going to solve this problem. To that statement, the answer is usually yes and no. Yes, the blockchain technology can potentially reduce the risk of single point of failure, something in the proposal that you're making, the problems that you identify. But does it have to be that? Because as we all probably know, blockchain technology is still in its infancy. And if you're trying to use that limited tech power to solve a big problem, for lack of better words, then we do have quite a long road ahead to make a decentralized based technology able to service the problem that you identified.
That's a really interesting way, and why I'm really happy to have you on the pod, because I don't get to pick VCs, investment leads, brains very often. And so it's really interesting to hear that the way we go about learning about projects is by listening to the founders who they themselves have been in the weeds, identified a problem, and then tell us what they think that solution is. And then you get to jump off from that as a launch point. So it's almost as if they present to you what the problem is, and then you get to bring your insight, expertise, and skill into evaluating the project. Thanks for sharing that.
The way I view VC's job is to allocate resources to foster growth. Obviously, if other funds, we have LPs, we also have a fiduciary responsibilities for LPs. But in the end, what we're doing is allocating resources, for instance, money and probably other stuff, to projects that we think, yes, propose a sound solution and can say, hey, if this works, it's going to solve the problem for the industry for our many whatever scale, and that could be a positive change. Then that's why we do it. Yes, we do. I mean, we're not going into a project and saying, hey, I know nothing, tell me what you know, right? It's not how it works. Yes, we do have our research. We do try to come up with solutions for a specific industry ourselves in the broader sense. And when we encounter founders that think alike, say, hey, okay, here we go. So that's when the magic happens. And that is basically how I think most VCs actively source the type of projects or innovations that they want. It's because, okay, I think that here's the problem. I think the solution for that problem could be in A, B, C, one of the three forms. Let me dive deeper into all of those three and see the market and see the developer community who's making what. And if you see enough projects, you do get an understanding of, okay, here are the three problems that, or here are the three loopholes that most founders have fallen into. Here are the common solutions for those, so that if you're trying to solve this problem, you encounter this one, so that I'm telling you this, so you don't have to go into that dead end again.
That's very cool. You also get to, as a VC, be the purveyor of knowledge, where you've probably heard of a few projects like this before, and you can avoid new founders from going into dead ends. So that's some really interesting insight. I want to gain some of your perspective on another piece of insight. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we had participated in a bunch of panels on Neo's Decoding Web3 tour. So I believe we were at 3 or 4 different universities that we collaborated on a panel together. What was your sort of vibe on the college campuses and how students are thinking about blockchain, crypto, Web3? What were some of your insights from, the way that students think today?
Yes, I had the privilege of speaking on panels with you for a couple of events, and I did get to chat with a few students there. Some of them we kept in contact. The overall sense I got from the audience, mostly students, was that the curiosity there is immense. Right, there's a bunch of curiosity. People were, especially the students, are very anxious to know what blockchain itself is, what it does, what it means for, in a broader sense, for the web services that we use today, as opposed to us as the industry practitioners see what it could be in the next decade or two. And I think the sheer amount of questions that the students have is astonishing. The sense I get is that I think for anyone who's interested in the industry, it's going to be a very steep learning curve. I don't think many of us, especially even in the industry, who call themselves OGs, have not been in this industry for more than 10 years, because the industry itself is not that. Okay, we just hit the mark. But it's not much older than that, right? So we're all learning. I like what you said about if you start today, you are one day ahead of the guy who's starting next. People who joined the industry in 2017 had a steep learning curve and still on that curve. And if you're joining today, yes, you have a little bit of catching up to do, but you're in. Not golden per se, but as long as you're here, it's everybody's job and everybody's responsibility to learn about this. So the curiosity part is what I get, the one point I get from the students. And a second point or feeling I get from the students is that some of them are actively building products or building even protocols, trying to make something of themselves, solve a problem, become famous, make money for all of the valid reasons, right? Student founders as a group, the feeling I get is that they tend to get very excited on a feature that they're proposing, and they've made most likely an MVP for that feature, for that functionality, and it's good. Many of them are very good. But in order for that notion, that idea to burst into a full-blown project, very often it lacks a little meat. Let me rephrase that. A feature innovation does not suffice a full-blown project. Because the way I look at it is that if you're making something new, if you're trying it out, yeah, that's a very good way to get your feet wet. But at some point, founders, especially founders, need to start think bigger pictures. Not as in, yes, I'm going to solve world hunger and build world peace within the next day, but you got to think about where your venture is going. The baby product you make, can it survive if you throw it out into the real world, right? And if it's just a feature, one functionality that's fun and cool, sure, that's great. But do we need to add something to that to make it a complete or self-sufficient kind of machine so that it runs in decentralized fashion? Because most likely you deploy it, people are going to use it as is. Yes, there are opportunities for you to make adjustments, to make upgrades, but do you worry about your runway? Do you worry about people finding out that it's not sufficient, so they move on to the next project, and your product doesn't get enough viewership or user base? And again, I'm not advocating for every founder, for every project to say, yes, we are the all-in-one solution for every problem that you're going to encounter in the world, right? I'm not advocating that, but it's never a bad idea to think about how does this project fit with the rest of the Lego pieces in the industry, right? Because yes, we're advocating for the Lego part, but if you look like an L-shaped Lego, you're not going to fit on the square hole in the rest of the Lego stack. If you're a DeFi protocol, chances are your users will rely on the lending practices of other protocols, will rely on the liquidation practices from other users. Then the question for you to think about is that how is your project fitting with the rest of the other practices? And by fit, I mean, is your solution technically feasible? Is the business logic sound? Is your user experience smooth? And if all that checks out, you've got a great storybook, you got a great storyline, and you're trying to make it happen, chances are you're going to need funding, you're going to need outside help. And that brings us to the next batch of questions. Is your evaluation reasonable for a feature, two functionalities, or a full-blown project, or where and how you're connected to the rest of the decentralized world? And for that evaluation, the funds you're getting, is that enough for you to build what you want to build? Is that enough for some kind of room of risk management? Is that enough for you to hire people? Is that enough for you if you want to pivot? Is the project going to be able to earn a profit on itself to feed back into the development cycle? Then comes the second batch of questions. If every question on those two categories check out, then usually there is a good chance for this project to succeed, at least making a meaningful impact to the industry.
Yeah, that's fascinating insight into the work of a VC, where you can look at and it's amazing that you took that from what students were thinking and then just described the whole thought process, where a founder or a student founder can be so psyched on this one killer feature that they have, but then you're there to remind them that this is just one piece of the puzzle and you need to have the whole comprehensive picture solved if you even want to get this killer feature out, because you need to have so many more ideas figured out. Where's it going to fit in? Who are you going to collaborate with? How are you going to hire? Just forcing the founder to ask all these questions before they're really ready to produce the product at a larger scale. Really, really interesting insight. And something that I'm really curious about is, how do the suggestions and questions that you ask founders and student founders, even just in general, how do these change along with the major narrative changes over time? So like in 2017, it was all about the ICOs, and maybe we were talking about raising. In 2020, it was all about DeFi. Maybe we were talking about integrating DeFi. In 2021, it was all about NFTs. Maybe we integrate an NFT. So how do these major narrative shifts that happen in our industry over time impact the sort of advice that you give to founders and help them grow their products out?
I wouldn't say the shifts in what's the word you used? Market trends.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the shifts in market trends necessarily have a direct impact on what I tell founders, what I tell students, what I tell developers, whoever's working on a project, right? I don't think that has a direct impact on what I say, because I don't think the shifts in market trends, I don't think them as the overall development of the whole industry. Is I call them shifts in hypes or in market focus. People are focusing on DeFi stuff right now. People are focusing on NFT stuff right now. Or hey, metaverse became a thing. Something became a thing. That's basically what we're calling market trends are. And say if someone is working on DeFi project that facilitates asset swaps, chances are very low for his project or her project at an early stage to deal with non-fungible assets, illiquid assets in the first 2 months. Right? They're going to focus on they're going to focus their ability and energy to a specific problem they're going to solve. So I don't think the verticals or categories of market trends or the hype, the focus areas necessarily affect each other. What I usually try to figure out with the founders is that how does your project or product fit into the relevant stuff, the relevant Lego pieces in your vertical. Yes, down the road, there are going to be a chance or two for that part to expand. Like say, if you're running a service that facilitates token swaps, can you swap for NFTs? Yes. The code change is not that difficult, but there's the code development. There's also project operation. And if you're running two lines of businesses, you do need two groups of people. or at least more people for that to happen. That brings us down from the code side, on the computer side, down to the real world. Say, how do we get people interested? How do we understand their needs? Do the trading behaviors and mentalities of NFT traders differ from fungible token traders? Do spot market users' mentality differ from that of the futures market, or people trading options, or people only do hedges, right? So those are the questions I'm trying to get them to answer. And there is, I would say, a longer term market shift. Let's not go back too early. You were talking about 2017 ICO, and then later on we discovered that there are IEOs, there are IDOs, there are something. Oh, there are a bunch of acronyms, right? Do they really differ so much from each other? Not really. They are all means through which projects, protocols raise funds and put their public asset, not public as in public access, not public as in ownership, right? Public asset to a completely open pool or pools of liquidity, so that people participating in the web service, in your protocol, have the chance to interact with the assets that you're going to use in order to use the protocol. Right? If you need it, you buy it. If you earned it, you sell it. And it's one of the core mechanisms or rationales behind decentralized economies, where say, hey, we're integrating the economic aspect into the tech product in the hope, or by calculation, and with the hope that it becomes self-sufficient, it becomes self-reliant, and becomes resilient as a whole, meaning together with other projects.
Awesome. Wrapping up, I want to ask one last question. I am a subscriber to the multi-chain thesis that moving forward, there's going to be a world where multiple chains exist and they serve multiple purposes. It's not just going to be a one chain wins all. What is your perspective on Dino chains, like darling chains from the ICO era? And how do they kind of fulfill a role that's necessary in the blockchain space today? And what does that mean for new chains that are just launching right now, or that might be launching in the future?
That's a big topic. Let me try to break it down a little bit. Okay, first way I'm going to go about this is that when we call some protocol a Dino chain, it means they're old. But is the team still working on stuff that's relevant, that's up to the most recent tech standards? That whether they're doing that is a kind of a big differentiator between, right? Because it could either be just if you're a Dino chain and you did propose some kind of solution on the consensus mechanism back in 2017, but right now you're only a trading product, you're only a target for speculation on token prices, ebbs and flows, and then you essentially made yourself a meme coin, so to speak. Right. But if you're still building on your full tech stack, if you are rolling out the support system for whoever wants to build on top of your ecosystem, and you're actively trying to build a network so that people can get easier access to build on, or to make test runs, to create experiments on the tech infrastructure that you created way back when, then I would say, yeah, go for it. You are doing the industry a big good by providing, hopefully, cheap, accessible, supported environment for decentralized application experience. Right? I use the word experiment a lot because I don't think whatever we're doing right now is going to be in the same form 20 years from now. We are in a constant shift and changes space. So there's that. What's the second part of the question?
You did a great job answering that. My second part of the question was, what role do new blockchain technologies that are emerging today, where do they fit?
Yes, I do subscribe to the notion of a multi-chain future. And I view L1s as the Web3 equivalent of IDCs in the Web2 world. These are the text infrastructure nodes and their servers and the miners and whatnot. They serve the environment where smart contracts get executed, where transactions get verified, right? So those are the IDCs. And in the Web2 world, we have a couple of web service giants, to name a few, right? Ali Cloud, AWS, Google Cloud, so on and so forth. And some companies even run their own private. And I think that could be a refreshing analogy to what blockchain sphere is going to be like. Let's say 20 years down the line, there's a multi-chain future. And for the newer L1s, one newer gets attention. Newer has a more easily managed circulating market cap. Newer is good at proposing new stuff and better at pivoting because they didn't have so much as some of the technical debt, to quote Tyler, technical debt as other L1s might have had. So yes, they're easier to get the attention. And that's, I would say, a good thing for business. Business meaning the experiments on the applications, the investment part, the speculating part, the arbitrage part, all that. But after the first look, we still need to take a deeper dive into the newly proposed L1s and see out of the trilemma, which one are you compromising? What are you proposing different from the Dino chains you're trying to replace? So to speak. Are you just another Solana but with a different name? Are you another Ethereum with another name? Are you another Cosmos with just another name? If so, then we might have a problem. If there's nothing wrong per se with the tech stack from the Dino, quote unquote, Dino chains, then why are you doing the exact same thing but with a different name? Yes, you might be able to gain a different crowd as first adopters, including users, including developers, including PR efforts, including whatever that is on there, right? But if whatever you're doing is essentially the same, then let's imagine 5 years down the line, are there going to be two L1s that look almost exactly the same, gonna survive simultaneously and share the market equally? I don't think so. Some or one or some of them are going to win out, are going to be better at operations, better at their branding management, better at attracting users and developers, hence better at actually building a usable ecosystem, and probably ebbs and flows well with the micro and macro economic and financial cycles, so that when you're putting your foot down the gas, you are able to go much farther and faster than if you're stomping on the gas in a desert with rocks and you're in a low ride car. That's going to crash your car. The harder you press on the gas, the harder it's going to crash. So coming back to wrap this up, you're asking me what my opinions on the newer L1s. I would say yes, break out the new branding, break out the new ecosystem. That's good for consolidating the now pretty loose market interest and market hype, and focus that energy onto whatever you're building or proposing. Would say that's a good start. But then whoever's in running that protocol, whoever's participating in that ecosystem, need to continue the effort of actual build, rather than this is something new, we're just going to flip it and move on to the next one. That's just a big no-no.
Awesome insight. I'm very cognizant of your time. So I would love to ask you, what are all the areas that you're excited about in the short-term future for Web3? But since we're nearing the end of our allotted time schedule, maybe what's one exciting area that you're looking forward to in seeing this space get built out in the short term?
Okay, I'm quantifying my understanding of short term to 2 to 3 quarters. If we're going off of that assumption, and then I think the the major theme for the next 2 to 3 quarters is still deleveraging, is still the aftermath of 2022 incidents and events. But if we look at a slightly longer term, going to mid-range outlook, and I quantify that to 2 to 3 years, then I would say I think there are going to be progresses made on the infrastructure part regarding scalability and security. Security meaning zero knowledge proof, security meaning verifiable asset reserve or more user-friendly liquidation mechanisms and whatnot. So those, scalability and security. I think that's what's really needed in the short to midterm.
Awesome. Len, thank you so much for coming to talk on the Smart Economy podcast. When we were on tour together, I couldn't wait to get you on the other end of the mic, and it was an amazing conversation we just had. So if there's a project that wants to talk to you on behalf of MEXC's M-Ventures and Labs, where can they reach out? And if there's just somebody who listened and wants to follow along with what you're doing, how can they keep in contact with you?
If you want to talk to anyone, including our venture arm at MEXC, find anyone, anywhere who is an actual part of MEXC team, they will make the internal referrals. And they're very warm-hearted in doing that. All of us are. And you guys can follow my Twitter at, did you post that later on, or do I have to say it?
Because your Twitter's a bunch of numbers, isn't it?
Right. A bunch of, there's a name and the numbers. It's LENSIR 13579. The odd numbers, the odd integers.
We'll link your Twitter handle to the show notes and to the tweet we release. But we've gone well over an hour. Thank you, Len, for coming to join the podcast. It was phenomenal to catch up with you. It was great to be on tour with you, and I can't wait to see you again in the future.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for your time. It was a delightful conversation, and I wish we can continue this.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, what did you think of that conversation? In light of recent events with the collapse of FTX, it was really refreshing to hear Len acknowledge that people might want to take their digital assets off centralized exchanges, and that he welcomed them to do so, stating that yes, customer assets on MEXC are indeed backed one-to-one. It was also really interesting to learn about the thought processes of a VC and the role that they play in the development of the blockchain industry. And it was just nice to hear Len's take on the role that older blockchain technologies have in the broader cryptocurrency space, especially if those teams have continued to build and iterate on the blockchain platform over the years. On that note, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Smart Economy podcast. If you liked what you heard and want to support the show, please keep Neo News Today in mind when voting for your Neo Council representative as part of Neo's governance process. We appreciate you and look forward to catching you next time.